period is largely of cast construction. Above the gun you can see a white light searchlight mounted over it. It has a very high has its own gun. Machine gun stuff. The Tankfest portion Martin Spencer, the fight all American vehicles in this period, is now driven on the rear sprocket. Originally you'll find in the wartime vehicles, we'll be showing you later on, that the engine drives to the front, and then they have the sprocket at the front turning the track. Now it's at the back, which is more or less what everybody else does, except the Israelis for some reason. So the only trouble with the castings was that it was difficult to regulate the height, and the American tanks are always quite tall by comparison with their other Western counterparts. But it's been replaced now by the Abrams, which, because it has the new style armour, is a much flatter and squarer vehicle. So really, even the M60, and the M60 is the last of its line. It was preceded by the M48, and earlier still the M47, and they were all more or less the same, with a cast turret on a fairly flat hull.
Those of you who've got the right angle on the tank, or you'll see when it moves off again in a moment, very big boat-shaped hull. So mentioning, as we said before, about mines, it's actually got a rounded hull underneath. Again, the idea to dissipate blast. But still in service all around the world. 15,000 M60s were built. So they're still in service. For example, if you've been watching the news, the Turkish army has a number sitting on the border with Syria at the moment. Now the next vehicle coming in, this is one of those vehicles that we're quite keen to point out is not a tank. This is a mobile artillery piece, and it's called the M110 artillery piece, and this particular one carries a weapon grade 8-inch gun on the top, or in modern parlance about 203mm. It was designed in the 1950s. They designed it for the 8-inch gun and 175mm gun, and it's a way of taking artillery around the battlefield. It's a relatively small vehicle. They initially hoped it was going to be air portable. You could get this on one or two of the larger transport planes, and as you can look at it, you can see it's got a whopping great spade on the back, and the idea is when it stops to fire, that spade is dropped in the ground, so it makes it as an anchor and helps with the recoil. Now this particular one, it's an M110A2 vehicle because it's got the muzzle brake on the end of the barrel, and the whole idea of the muzzle brakes, it captures gases as they leave the barrel behind the shell, and by capturing the gas it helps lessen the recoil. And when you're looking at a gun this big, that's one hell of a lot of recoil comes out of that barrel when it fires. If it did fire on maximum charge, sitting where we are now, it could quite happily bomb Bournemouth. About 30 kilometres would be the range of the shell in this vehicle.
The other thing you'll notice about it is that the way the gun is perched on top of the chassis is a what they call the 25-ton chassis, by the way, which was used for a number of other things, ARVs and so on, and again powered by a Continental diesel engine. But there's nowhere for storing ammunition. That had to be carried on a separate vehicle and only loaded when the thing was firing. So they're not really a front-line vehicle, they operate more behind the lines.
Now this absolute whopper that's coming on now, this vehicle is something called the M103, which was a tank that dates back to the 1950s. And it's a tank that was designed at the height of the Cold War. It was when the Western nations were really worried about the bigger Russian tanks, the JS3, the T-10 tanks. And in America, they designed this huge vehicle, enormous cast turret, you can see on the top there. And in Britain, of course, we designed the Conqueror tank just at the same time. And the idea behind these tanks was really to have a super heavy, well-protected tank with a massive 120mm gun. This is the same gun that's on our Conqueror tank. And they were supposed to be in a sort of overwatch position. If the Russian tanks had attacked, these were supposed to be on the hill somewhere, slightly back from the front line, picking off Russian tanks before they got nearer our main frontline tanks, such as the M48 in the American Army, or in the British Army, the Centurion tanks. It didn't really go down very well, and it was also enormously expensive. One of these tanks, back in 1954, cost $300,000. And even back then, that was an awful lot of money. So they weren't in army service a long time. They were passed on to the US Marines, and our one here is in actually US Marines colours, and they had them in service into the early 70s.
M103 is powered again by a Continental diesel. Again has torsion bar suspension, the larger number of road wheels. It has that same curved shaped underside of its hull to deflect the mine blast and that sort of thing. The gun's 120mm. It's extremely powerful but takes a lot of loading. In fact, normally the tank would carry 2 loads.